Hello, I'm Steven.
And I'm Aaron.
And we've just seen
Shelby
Shelby Oaks, new film that's out in theaters right now, starring Camille Sullivan, and it is directed by Chris Stuckman. So, the thing that makes this film notable is that it's the debut feature of YouTube critic Chris Stuckman, content creator that you and I both like. So whenever a project like this is announced, you see someone of Chris Stuckman's standing, of his position on YouTube, finally realizing his dream to be a filmmaker. It's a wonderful thing. So you and I go into this film wanting him to succeed, because why wouldn't you? Unfortunately, this just wasn't any damn good.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty good right up until it wasn't.
Oh, really? Interesting. I thought this thing was kind of flopping from the start.
Yeah, the thing about this movie is that it kind of bucks like conventional horror tropes in the beginning because it takes advantage of the things that Chris Stuckman knows inside and out, which is YouTube and like kind of internet celebrity and internet personalities. Because the central story revolves around like this paranormal investigation crew on YouTube that goes missing, and then one by one they're killed off and discovered, except for one girl who remains missing, and that's Riley Brennan.
Yes, there's a group of paranormal investigators called the Paranormal Paranoids. We'll get back to that name in a second. They go missing. Like you said, they're discovered one by one, except for Riley Brennan, who is the sister of Mia Brennan. 12 years after Riley's disappearance, somebody shows up on Mia's doorstep with a videotape titled Shelby Oaks. We won't say what happens during this encounter, but it's the first real scare of the movie. And then the plot gets going.
Yeah, so the first act of the movie is staged as like a YouTube documentary or just like a documentary in general with like talking heads recounting, stuff that happened in the past, who these people were, what their show was all about.
Yeah, found footage, and it's very much reminiscent of Blair Witch, which you haven't seen actually, have you?
No, I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen a lot of YouTube documentaries and YouTube videos kind of about topics like this that are shot and portrayed like in exactly this kind of way. So I thought he was really kind of nailing the opening and the setup, which, yeah, it's like a mockumentary found footage story about this missing person in the investigation. And then after the first act, it turns into, a more traditional Hollywood horror film. And that's where the whole thing for me kind of falls apart.
Yeah, and I think it was not only not working for us, but the other people in the screening too, because when that guy shows up on Mia's doorstep and the thing happens that kickstarts the plot, the people in our audience were laughing.
Yeah, it's hard to know exactly if that's the fault of the film or if it's just the fault of a, cynical, ironic, insincere society that we live in, because that happens quite often.
Yeah.
For things that it shouldn't happen with.
I could be wrong, it could be just cynicism, but my gut instinct was to say that they were laughing at the film because internally, as I was watching it, I was thinking, ooh, this is not landing for me. I don't like the way it's shot. I think the acting is kind of hokey and overdone.
That was the only thing about that moment that kind of hit me was that the acting wasn't quite up to par for what it needed to be for that moment to hit the way it should.
Yeah, and I also think that moment probably would have benefited from being very quick and sudden instead of happening in slow motion so the titles can run.
I would probably agree with that. Just, more out of nowhere and less telegraphed. But yeah, I actually really liked the opening of this. I thought it utilized his strengths. It showcased that he really has a handle on that corner of the internet. And it's something unique about him that he does because he's been doing this for like over 10 years.
Yeah, full disclosure, I really didn't like that opening. It's kind of the News on the March Citizen Kane opening that sets up all the major things that are going to happen in the plot, but I thought the editing was very shoddy. All the digital camera movements and whip zooms, that just looked so distracting and uncinematic.
Maybe it's just because I feel like I've probably watched more content like that, or maybe been aware of more of it than you have
probably
on YouTube.
But it struck you as authentic.
Yeah, to me it was working. It felt like something I would have seen on YouTube, and it was presented in a kind of authentic, realistic way compared to the things that I've seen.
But yeah, after that first act, this is where the problems start. We said that in the opening, the documentary sets up all the major locations, and this is basically all that happens. That documentary sets up the 3 locations the main character will go to. She goes to them, and then the movie climaxes.
Yeah. From the end of Act One forward, like I said, it turned into more traditional horror movie with like a traditional narrative, complete with the traditional tried and true like overused horror tropes.
Yeah, I think the film is competently directed, but incompetently written. I'm astounded by the storytelling fundamentals that are lost here. Like this character Mia, who's in search of her sister, she has a husband. That guy doesn't do dick.
Well,
The
he's basically there to be an obstacle or somebody to tell the main character they're crazy.
He should be featured in it more then. But yeah, here's the thing: is like the whole point of this movie is this woman is going on a journey to find her long lost sister, and it's supposed to be a tale of her becoming progressively more obsessed with the journey and psychologically impacted by it. But I feel like we don't really see that.
I think you and I are kind of like of a similar mind here that maybe what would have been more interesting, and this kind of ties into the name of the group, Paranormal Paranoids. It would have been more interesting if the movie was more of an exploration of the main character's psyche, and maybe, you know, some of this stuff that we're seeing is not necessarily what is actually going on. There are logical explanations for things, but she's being drawn into this world of paranoia and conspiracy where she believes, you know, that there's some kind of supernatural reason for what's going on.
Yeah, I thought the film was going in that direction. We were gonna get more, like, the main character would be more layered than this, because all that really happens is the main character, like, goes to a location, a big scare happens, and then she goes to the next location. In a film like this, you want to see fundamental things, like, how is the journey affecting the main character? How are the characters around her reacting to the main character? How does she react to those characters reacting to her? There's none of that. Like I said, the husband, she has like two scenes with him, like two, and in one of them, she's like, "Oh, I think that there are supernatural forces at play here," and then he says, "I think you need help." And then that's about it. He doesn't show his ass up until the end of the film, the tail end.
Yeah. The other major problem, I think, with the movie, and it kind of ties into like the character journey or stuff you're talking about, is the whole idea is that where is Riley Brennan? Like the mystery is what happened, and the mystery is kind of revealed but not revealed fairly early in the movie because this is one of those movies where the person investigating goes to a library or they go to some place to do some research and they look up all the supernatural stuff, and the very like first thing they show her discovering or reading about turns out to be the exact thing that's going on. It's like there's not much of a mystery here.
No, there's no mystery unfolding.
Because she finds symbols that are drawn into areas or carved into trees, or like little wooden sticks are put into shrines in the ground with like symbology and stuff like that. So let's whip out the book of symbology and the book of demonology, and it's like all the traditional stuff. But yeah, it's basically revealed almost immediately as soon as the investigation starts, and then you're just slowly getting up to the point where it's just confirmed. It's like, oh, okay, well, it is the thing that you've basically been teasing the whole movie.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you do that way?
And then the other issue regarding the main character is that she doesn't really change as a person throughout the movie. It would have been, I don't want to rewrite the movie, but it would have been kind of interesting that if after 12 years, the main character, we saw what her life was like with her husband before this guy showed up on her doorstep, and maybe she kind of made peace with it, but it was still in the back of her mind that she'll never know what happened to her sister. And then, when this thing turns her world upside down, we see a change in her character as she progressively gets more obsessed and more psychologically affected by the journey.
Yeah, there's also another part of her character that's established fairly early, is the fact that investigating this disappearance has kind of taken over her life so much that she sacrificed having a family, and she always wanted to be a mother.
Yeah.
And this is something that is established, then not really talked about, and then without saying how or what happens, it's brought up again near the end of the movie and resolved. It's almost like the climax of the movie should have been like the first act break, and then the rest of the movie should have been about the fallout. Kind of like Room,
Oh
where
yeah.
the first half of the movie is like being trapped in the bunker, and then spoilers for a 10-year-old movie. The second half is what happens when we're out of the bunker.
Yeah, I could see that. What did you think of the dialogue in this?
I thought it ranged from generic to poor.
Yes. There's a scene in the movie where Mia goes to a prison to talk to Warden Keith David. they they
I know what line you're gonna bring up
Yeah,
already.
they got tremendous character actor Keith David here in this film playing a prison warden. He's talking about the prison that he ran, and he has this terrible line where he said, "We called cell block 3 the grave because everyone there had one foot in it." And I cringed so hard.
Yeah, like even thinking about the logic of the dialogue, like okay, why would everybody have one foot in the grave in the cell block? Is everybody there like diseased or half dead or something? Are they on death row?
Yeah.
Like exactly why would you call it that? And why is that the reason you call it? It's just something that was written because
He thought it sounded cool.
he thought it sounded cool or
And
spooky
ominous.
or ominous. Yeah, there's stuff like that all throughout the movie. It very much feels like somebody's first script.
Feels like a first draft.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I know this is like been a passion project for him for a long time, and I think he wrote it with his wife.
Is that right?
But yeah, I mean, I get it. It is like his first screenplay and first like produced feature.
If nothing else, this is a learning experience, and I hope he does learn from his mistakes and he knows what not to do next time, and I hope there is a next time.
Yeah, I do too. Because like you said earlier, I think the direction's actually pretty good, and for as generic as it is, a lot of the time, he actually doesn't utilize, at least not that I can remember, too many like typical jump scares. He actually does try to make some scenes linger a little bit.
There was a few jump scares that I thought were so easy, and
Yeah.
another issue slash tip is that next time, please don't wear your influences on your sleeve this hard, because I shouldn't be thinking this much of other movies when I watch it, because I was thinking all throughout, like, the found footage at the beginning and all those little stick figures, Blair Witch.
Yeah, straight out of Blair Witch.
And then he's clearly a fan of Mike Flanagan, who helped get this produced,
Yeah.
so good for him.
The guy lives and breathes horror films. Like, that's kind of his bread and butter and has been for a long time. And it is interesting to see somebody who's kind of grew up and talked about that culture their entire lives basically put all their favorite things out into their own feature. But it would have been nice to see, like, I don't feel like I have seen a Chris Stuckman movie necessarily as I have like Chris Stuckman doing everybody else's work.
Yes, because there were also little touches of Rosemary's Baby and what felt like to me maybe a little bit of Ari Aster.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up Ari Aster because this movie reminded me a lot of Hereditary.
Yeah, I mean,
complete with the same problems.
Yeah.
I love the first 2/3 of Hereditary where it's all tension and build up, and then what Ari Aster does is he actually saves the mystery for the end of the movie, but when you get there, it's like, really? This is stuff that we've seen for the last 4 decades? But for Shelby Oaks, it's like the first act is good, and then the second 2/3 of the movie is just stuff we've seen for the last 4 decades.
Speaking of Shelby Oaks, I was gonna say, getting back to the name, he needs to come up with better names. Paranormal Paranoids sucks.
It's not great, but at the same time, I could totally see a YouTube show called that. Like,
I can too, but for the sake of making a film that is meant to invoke horror, don't call your paranormal investigation team Paranormal Paranoids. That sounds like some anime shit.
yeah.
And then the title itself blows, Shelby Oaks. That was the thing that concerned me when I first heard Chris talk about this, when he said, I made a movie, and he's like, it's called Shelby Oaks. And I was like, that's kind of a suck-ass title. It sounds like a retirement home. it doesn't have the ominousness or the power of, like, Twin Peaks or Rose Red or Cloverfield. Please come up with a better title next time.
Yeah. I was going to talk about like some of the locations in like Shelby Oaks being like an abandoned town complete with a rundown overgrown amusement park. It's just like that's Yet another like hard trope that we've seen a million times. But there are some pretty decent locations in the movie. Like some of the locations in the woods. There's like the prison that they go to is actually pretty cool and well lit and well shot.
Yeah, although the exterior is
The
some
exterior's
really bad CG.
it's odd because I saw like pictures and video of that location from the outside, and I'm not sure if they like heavily modified it in CG because they wanted it to be like darker or spookier or whatever. But it feels like they didn't need to do all that. I do know that this movie did have a lot of reshoots after its first cut,
Yeah, I heard about that.
where they gave it like another $1 million to add some more effects, some more gore, and some more like I'm sure CG stuff. Like we got the spooky dogs and the CG dogs too.
I was gonna say it'd be great if in that extra million, they got like a dog handler because the dogs in this movie are fake as shit. And dogs,
Yeah,
those are the animals that are supposed to be easier to train. Like, you can't teach a cat to do a damn thing, but a dog?
yeah. Is there anything you did like?
There was one funny line about crackers towards the end. That's it.
That was pretty much my favorite sequence of the movie.
That was the one part of the movie where it actually felt like I was watching a genuine horror film and not some piss poor amateur hour.
Well, it's also like one of the only times that there's actually any levity in the movie, and it feels like it's on purpose.
Yeah, true. I think the same. I think it is meant to be funny. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, I love how weird and kind of over the top it is. And I feel like maybe that he needs to lean into that because that was kind of my favorite sequence of the movie is like you go to the generic spooky cabin in the woods where there's a spooky old lady living by herself and then like the room is just covered in filth and mold and nastiness and then she's sitting in this chair in the dark and then her dialogue and the way she performs it was just wonderful.
Yeah.
And yeah, it feels like it's one of the only times where the movie has any humor, and it's actually on purpose and it works. I love that section of the movie, and then it reverts back into kind of mediocrity.
And this is another film where after all the build up, which is unimpressive, you get to the climax and then you're like, "Oh, that was it?"
Yeah, the end of the movie. I like the idea, even though it's kind of borrowed from other films that we've seen recently. It's just executed so clunkily here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's almost even hard to know what happens in like the final scene of the movie. It's almost comical how quick everything happens and how strange it is. And it's supposed to be shocking and leave the audience like with a gasp. And it just left me with a question mark and like, why did we do it this way? Like, why is this the direction you went?
Yeah. Far from a gasp, it's a whimper.
He has all the pieces that he needs. He just doesn't have the right story.
Sloppy execution.
Yeah.
So what is your final number grade on a scale of 1 to 10?
Like a 5. I didn't think it was terrible. I didn't hate the movie. I just think it's so mediocre and forgettable.
Yeah, I'll give this a 4. I think it's one of the weakest films of the year, but not the worst. We've seen worse.
Yeah, I really liked the first act and the setup for everything. I thought it was a really interesting way for him to tackle this story, and even like the transition to traditional Hollywood film after the found footage documentary opening. I thought, okay, well, this is a unique idea that let's see how he does this. But it just becomes an excuse for him to make every horror movie we've seen since the 1960s.
Appreciate the effort, Chris, but better luck next time.